Reading from the Gospel of John. Jesus said, "Now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world will be driven out. And I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself." He said this to indicate what kind of death he was to die. The crowd answered him, "We have heard from the law that the Messiah remains forever. How can you say that the Son of Man must be lifted up? Who is this Son of Man?" Jesus said to them, "The light is with you a little while longer. Walk while you have the light, so that the darkness may not overtake you. If you walk in the darkness, you do not know where you are going. While you have the light, believe in the light, so that you may become children of the light." Today is a feast day in the church calendar. It's Holy Cross Day. It's kind of an interesting feast day to celebrate or to reflect upon Jesus' death upon the cross, and the cross itself as both an instrument of torture and an instrument of salvation. Reflecting on Jesus' death on the cross gives us a unique take that one really only finds in the Christian faith. This idea that God's self, was willing to suffer in a very tragic manner for the salvation of all. This is the point when, even in our own faith, we know that we have a God who understands the suffering that can be at the very core of what it means to be human. It is in this moment that we can find connection with a God who knows intimately what that means to suffer and to be in pain. This can be extremely comforting for us when we are suffering, when we find ourselves in a space of suffering. But sometimes as Christians, and historically this is absolutely true, we have venerated suffering, which is not the right thing to do. God does not intend for us to suffer. That shouldn't be the core of who we are and what it means to be human. That core should be love, justice, that thing that truly reflects the image of our Creator. So there are parts of suffering that seem a bit natural to the human experience. But there's a hell of a lot of suffering in our world that is due to injustice, that has nothing to do with the human experience, but is a result of layers and systems and laws that cause suffering. And yes, God meets us in our suffering, but we are also called to be children of the light, to walk in the light and to follow Jesus' footsteps. The cross is not just about suffering. The cross is also about justice. And when we are called to pick up our cross and follow Him, follow Jesus, that means that we are called to be fighters for justice. And in this world, when we look around and see spaces of suffering, when we see people suffering, when we find at the core that there is an injustice that is causing that suffering, that is our job as Christians, to address that injustice the best way we can, to follow Jesus, not only into suffering when that happens in our lives, but through that on a fight for justice. That is the nature of the cross. Amen.